Even if you're not stuck living in a food desert where all you have to eat is corn puffs and Cousin Willie's buttery explosion popcorn, you still aren't out of the proverbial woods because mental health is also a huge issue here. 18.1% of US adults suffer from severe anxiety, and 6.7% suffer from severe depression in a given year, making our depression rate the second highest of any country.
Media kwa bani nchi asronkon edemamo de ba Spade TV so. Aha say ye Kasapreko unity in diversity. So bia odi edwumadi echi bia be hu se edumre bia eye edi nkomo de fa amanone ene ye mamu ase asem. Obu a otigana ha gidi oye connection pese otu kwan kwa abrochiri. Obu onso wa abrochiri ono nso eboabo ne ho a oba beji asetena pa ewo ha say nene no obi ewo abrochiri ho no oye broni fite a bibini moja ba ko say ni mu ono no the American sama ba e de mransem du aba say no ntino hwe no obi antu ni nan a ma abrochiri ho na asem no surprise kakra amintwa me ho kwaje ma bo afon kra to mra na memfa me som.
Hello, Abusiafo. But Sunburst medicated powder. Now, on your form. Hey, say when a man in swans one years is never good out at all. About cock, I'm a what so.
Or don't.
It's what now I'm on why you say. A crow. Sakakarere, a yam, a crow, a juniper bosso, and nunye. Sunburst medicated ointment, a wow.
My possum, to me.
Who when Pedro be onia ments na homa honam ya enwu wani maase what posso complaining na et so betwa koto Sunburst herbal balm ye from mama Sunburst products edutwem
Obenya Sunburst products our pharmacies any herbal shops to phone friend 0554 907 393 FDA agidwadi nkratoe yatum.
Me mama kwaba ahoma time so from here to there abodin a papa ya ode saade we sum ode wo YouTube na oye obroni fitafita wote America na wo say 10 reasons why ensese obi kase obetna America se ne papem se ne bonim always say no opoto kasem na me yenhwemra mretie mu eba mababe chichiche mu nyina ne nyina yate ase.
Do you live in the US of A? Well, according to my YouTube analytics, there's a 72.5% chance you'd answer yes. But if your answer's no and you've ever pondered whether fireworks, hot dogs, and getting a bald eagle tattoo sound like a good time, call me a demolition crew, cause I'm about to break it down for ya. I came in like a wrecking ball. Ouch! Wait, seriously? That's what we're left with? An American flag, Tiger King, and are those huge toilet stall gaps? Remind me why we're like the only country that has those again. Well, it's because we've also got this thing called American innovation. It's no wonder we have by far the best economy in the world, and so many incredible things were invented here. The American dream has stood as a beacon of hope for people far and wide, with over 200 different nationalities calling the US home. But while that diversity and innovation, combined with gorgeous landscapes, make the United States a great place to live, that doesn't mean it's perfect. Find out why in my top 10 reasons not to move to the USA. And let's hit 5,000 likes if you want to see a video on the 10 best countries for 2022. Number 10, the car-dependent culture. Unless you live in New York, San Francisco, or the handful of other walkable cities with good public transit, you're gonna need a car to live in the USA. Especially the further west you go, as most of the country lacks any real urban planning, and cities and towns are much more spread out. Now, if you've lived your entire life in the US, you might think this is normal, and it could even be a huge pro for you if you're someone who loves long drives on the open road. But it'll be a big culture shock if you're coming from a place in Europe or Asia, where cities are very walkable and public transportation is phenomenal. And it is creating a problem here, considering the average American only takes around 5,000 steps a day, which is just half of what's recommended for a healthy lifestyle. In fact, many people in sprawling cities like LA, Phoenix, or Houston, as well as most rural parts of the country, don't even walk at all. And it's not like they really need to, with drive-thrus for everything from food to banks to pharmacies. Number 9. If you value your health. Considering that many Americans don't even walk, much less actively exercise, it should come as no surprise that 42.4% of US adults are obese, making it the 11th most obese nation in the world. And the severe lack of healthy food options in most parts of the country certainly doesn't help. In fact, there's tons of foods Americans eat regularly that are actually illegal in many other countries due to all the chemical additives. But that's not all. Even if you're not stuck living in a food desert where all you have to eat is corn puffs and Cousin Willie's buttery explosion popcorn, you still aren't out of the proverbial woods because mental health is also a huge issue here. 18.1% of US adults suffer from severe anxiety and 6.7% suffer from severe depression in a given year, making our depression rate the second highest of any country. Number 8. Healthcare. Poor health might be rampant in the US, but hey, at least there's quality healthcare to treat all the problems. Well, if you can afford it, because the US is the only industrialized nation to not offer universal healthcare for all of its residents. So every year, 20 to 45,000 people actually die just because they don't have health insurance. Not to mention how many Americans go broke from an unforeseen illness or injury. And you can't blame them. The average annual health insurance cost is nearly $7,500 for an individual and over $21,000 for a family. And even then, you still might have to pay out of pocket if the doctor or hospital that you go to is considered out of network. Pharmaceutical drugs and medicines also cost way more here than in other countries, so it's no wonder most Americans don't see a doctor until they absolutely have to, which often results in many minor issues that could have easily been prevented, turning into major issues that need extensive care. Number 7. It's expensive. Healthcare costs are just one of the many things that make the US the 11th most expensive country in the world. Although, to be fair, at least it also does have the 3rd highest purchasing power index, since wages are pretty high too. And they better be, because median rent costs in the US are the 7th most expensive globally, with the median renter spending 31.1% of their income on rent. And poor renters, or those in the bottom 20% of incomes, spend nearly 75% of their income on rent. Now, if you're coming from Europe or Canada, you might find the cost of living as a whole to be about on par or even slightly lower. But compared to most of the world, the US's cost of living is through the roof, especially when you realize sales taxes aren't included on the price tag of products and you have to tip an extra 15 to 25% at restaurants. Number 6. Low wages and high poverty. What do you mean low wages? You just said America has high wages and a great economy. And yeah, it does, with the 9th highest nominal GDP per capita at $68,300. But that doesn't mean many people aren't struggling, as there's also a huge division of wealth. If you can't manage to snag an actual good-paying job, you're unlikely to make ends meet. Because with a federal minimum wage of just $7.25 an hour, or around $15,000 a year, the US only has the 17th highest minimum income among industrialized nations, despite having by far the best economy in the world. And sure, most workers here do make more than minimum wage, but 48 million of them still make less than $15 an hour, which in a lot of states still isn't enough to get by. Not to mention, many Americans are also intentionally underemployed, so employers don't have to pay them benefits. I mean, the US being the only country other than Papua New Guinea and 5 small Pacific Island nations to not require paid family leave should show you how little this country cares about its workers. As a result, our international poverty rate is 17.8%, with an even higher rate of childhood poverty at 20.9%. Number 5. It's dangerous. Do you know what high poverty usually leads to? Crime. So it shouldn't be a surprise that the US is more dangerous than any other industrialized nation and the 36th most dangerous country overall. The crime rate is nearly triple that of most of Europe, and the homicide rate is over 10 times that of Europe. Now sure, it's not like you need to worry about being shot in broad daylight in most parts of the country, as the US isn't nearly as dangerous as a place like El Salvador, but there are many US cities that are among the most dangerous in the world, such as St. Louis, whose murder rate of 88 people per 100,000 is nearly double El Salvador's rate, and El Salvador is by far the most dangerous country. Number 4, education. Education in the US isn't like in most European countries where the quality of schooling is great regardless of where you live. It's a lot more like your 3 times divorced, pansexual, non-monogamous Aunt Tilda's relationship. Complicated. Many Americans actually choose where they're gonna live based solely on school districts. Because one town might have amazing schools, while the next city over has terrible funding and a student-to-teacher ratio of 40-1. Heck, there have even been cases of students graduating high school without knowing how to read. Needless to say, the American education system is a dilemma. But at least there are other options, such as homeschool, charter school, private school, Montessori school, or old school. But no matter what school you choose, your kids will likely feel like they have to go to college even if the job they want doesn't require it. Higher education is heavily ingrained in the American culture, with many parents thinking their children will end up failures if they don't go to university. So unlike many other countries that put just as much of an emphasis on trade school, apprenticeships, or working, a college degree seems to be the only thing that matters to many Americans. And no, it's not free, and no, it does not guarantee you'll get a good job. All it does guarantee is that you'll probably be in debt until you're at least 50, because the total US student loan debt of $1.75 trillion is growing 6 times faster than the nation's economy, with no signs of slowing down. Number 3, geographic and ideational isolation. Many Americans think the US is the best country, while objectively, it just isn't. And many of those same people have never visited another country before. Heck, even when Americans do travel, many don't care to learn about new cultures or broaden their horizons, and instead opt to stay in resorts or English-speaking areas where the culture is similar to what they're familiar with. In a sense, Americans are some of the most closed-minded people, and they don't even know it. And if you're an American watching this and want to rage at that comment, you're kind of proving my point. Maybe it's because of its geographic isolation and how difficult and expensive it is to travel to countries other than Canada or Mexico, or perhaps the superiority complex that the US presents to the rest of the world. But nearly 30% of Americans have never left the country, and even more tend to have a very individualistic and closed mindset. As a result, many US residents feel alone and don't have a sense of community, which is another reason for our high depression rates and can be a huge culture shock if you're coming from a country where an emphasis is put on family and caring about the collective. Number 2, the country is very divided. Speaking of closed-mindedness, the two-party political system has really done us dirty. I mean, there's a reason few industrialized nations have it, because you can hardly get anything done. And our politicians and the reactionary media just seem to want to distract and divide us, separating the public into either Team Red or Team Blue. When in actuality, there's nuance to everything, and most Americans would probably agree on many of the same goals if labels weren't attached, and people could just have open and honest conversations without attacking each other. But that probably isn't going to be happening anytime soon, as more and more people just stay in their echo chambers and refuse to even listen to what someone with a different viewpoint has to say. Between the ever-increasing classism and continuously polarizing government agendas, the divisiveness of the social and political atmosphere in our nation is the worst it's been since the Civil War. When states were so divided, they literally left the country. Speaking of which, Canada is actually preparing for us to have another civil war. Now, before we get to number 1, make sure you leave a like and subscribe and comment which country you want me to cover next. Also, check out my videos on the 10 reasons why you shouldn't move to Canada or Australia. But without further ado, number 1. it's very difficult to immigrate here. If everything on this list so far doesn't in the slightest way concern you, and you're like, sign me up, yeah, the US still sounds awesome! Well, I hate to break it to you, but you probably won't be able to move here. Because while the US does have the most foreign-born residents by far, accounting for nearly 20% of all immigrants in the world, they're also just a select few of the hundreds of millions of applicants. To even have a shot at meeting the immigration requirements, you'll need to either marry an American citizen, be an award-winning writer, scientist, or tech mogul, be a skilled worker not born in India or China, and if you are born in India, China, the Philippines, or Mexico, be prepared to wait in line for at least a few decades. Or you could be a refugee, although 75% of asylum seekers are still denied. This is honestly the biggest reason why people who want to move here don't. It's a ton of work, requires a lot of time and money, and there's no guarantee you'll even be allowed in.
Yes, in your tiny jaho, and no one news in your session if I. Baby Andrew, yes, ow. Yes, or mohono, technology in your money means a man put to aba. Nanny or kind kakra madrian bason say, or see you need a car. So we need car, won't means na America. If you say, quining in a quine tin, and Tessa has a bit to me, Ginny Jam, and anti-free la pass come her dinner, the Debbie. I brought you on America one and Tessa. Near to me, no kind of say poor diet. Moon nini and a papra, and one set chips, way, just a pastries, nay, oily foods and quan of war. It is a woofy woman, and I say American crocons vessel of American. Brand catcher was say, oh, ba, who crew more mumbra. And yes, I will need you and papa be a day, and you were I think so poor health care. As some way, dear, one papa, but if you say, a year to 2 a chroma says, and pennyphony be cramp for home for one, quadjaya share our. See, you have master more kind, as I am one cry, and so on not to hope, and no name secrets a war. Entia or this idea we are there about it too. Near to Sumin say high cost of living. American phone tied boy than papa. American phone near Matuto, a year and just any boy than papa, no dear, ye uncle will be crown pono, that it be. And then your son come on to us to be a year. Low wages and poor economy. Wages and salary day in Nakusian school, salary near monthly basis, wages and say, and they are the amount and our chair the amount, or say, one a low cra. She said, send your also when yes, you can need to meet now, one hour Phyllis say no, a human wire and a pack, cow trample so many dear crampon and economy no one so, and sit down con kind crap. I send back on so our kind imagine about and say, or say terrible educational system. Terrible educational system pa. American. Well, omo free say kono na bi omo tumi e dia dance aba. Fi say tie die. Yenim say kono die e ho ya ahogono so ma adesua kra. Enso ono nanim ne oyeden oka. We nyina de say baby awo bia no ebetumi ayeye. Na emom Oshemu tutu a otu kwan kosakra na enyema mu kakra obo mutu ono omo ye fie yie pa o omo ye fie yie enso obaye ne den wa ma guidelines ni nyina nti wo kwa no aboa ho no wanka so hu nya odo ho ye den ekwa akosem ena asem de ni adesua die sokode ena me de sommo Sunbelt Healthcare ena brebi omo son yasen ye wo herbal balm eno ni ye ma ahotutu wapo no aposo edododowa herbal balm ni ye ma se bibi etwa na bibi ahono afen so no medicated powder and a medicated ointment no eya de ba akon etu honamani nsisi nyina ebia wo ko honamani eyi serious pa pimples eya mekro heat rashes ne nema me kamfo sa edrum yunu ye den edema fa powder ne yeso anwumra na da wonko bebia na medicated ointment ne de fasra ti se wonko ense o ready any kra subscribe na like my e YouTube Spade TV Edin Krona nso wo TikTok, Twitter, Instagram and Facebook. Follow, share, ye dwumadi nyina na comment e man medamase.
Hello, abusiafo. But Sunburst medicated powder. Now on your form. Hey, say when a man in swans one yes is you. Never good out at all. About cock, I'm a what so.
Or
Hey, tell me. It's what's now how I'm why you say. A crow.
Sakakarere, a yam, a crow, a juniper boso. And only Sunburst medicated ointment. A beb wow.
maposo. Nina to me.
Who when Pedro be Onia, men's na home man when I'm out and who when Nimasi. What possible complaining na at so betra. Koto Sunburst herbal balm. You're from Mama Sunburst. Sunburst products, a dutrim.
Obenya Sunburst products. Our pharmacies. Any herbal shops name. To phone friend 0551 907 393. FDA. I did Jedi and Kratio Yatum.